what's up, everyone? This is not even going to call this an episode. It's just going to be a quick little March Madness special of Let's Take a Dive. It is very early Thursday morning, March 16th. It's almost 2 in the morning. The game's starting in about 7 hours, I believe. 9:25 or something's first tip off. Wanted to do a quick little March Madness of just my picks, my bracket, all that kind of stuff, and I'll roll out an actual episode of Let's Take a Dive later this week. So we will go ahead and start with the Eastern region here. Dive right into it. All right. So we got Villanova, number 1 seed, against Mount St. Mary's, number 16 seed. I will try not to repeat myself through this first round, but a 16 seed has never beat a 1 seed before. So I'm just going to go ahead and call that a shoo-in for the most part. So Villanova takes this one pretty easily. Next matchup is number 8 Wisconsin against number 9 Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech does have a stud player on their team, Zach Leday, but I still think that Virginia Tech losing Chris Clark for the season and stuff is just going to be too much for them to handle. Wisconsin's a known commodity in the tournament. They've been there a few times in the past, been deep a few times in the past couple years. Wisconsin has horrible free throw shooting, but I don't think in this round it's really going to matter as much. So I think Wisconsin takes this one. Then we got University of North Carolina Willingham against Virginia. I think Virginia is still known for their tough defense. Every year, past 2 or 3 years, they've been just known for their really stingy defense, but they always have like zero offense as well. And I think in that case, just one big run by a team could put them out of the tournament. And so if it's not going to happen in the first round, it's definitely going to happen in the second round. However, I believe it's going to happen in the first round. So I think UNC Willingham pulls out a upset against Virginia in this round. Then we got Eastern Tennessee against number 4 Florida in this matchup. Now, Florida's got some good players. They've got they're kind of another team that's known for being in the tournament. Not as much lately, but I think this is another case where a team can get real hot, and this is actually one of the more picked upsets that I've seen so far. A lot of pros and analysts and bracketologists and all that kind of stuff. This is one of their upsets. So I like the look of it and everything too. Florida didn't look good in the SEC tournament, which isn't really that. SEC is not really a top-notch college basketball school, so for them to not really even do much in that tournament says a lot. So I think Eastern Tennessee takes this one. Next matchup, we have number 6 SMU versus I think on my screen here it shows that So it shows that it was the Providence versus USC play-in game. USC ended up taking that game, so it's SMU versus USC. SMU is actually a team they're on a really big hot streak right now, and it's a team that I think looks really good. I don't want to butcher the guy's name, but Shimi Ojale. He's been pretty dominant for them as of late, so I think him enough is going to be powering them through this bracket here. I think they can beat USC pretty easily here, and Ojale actually has pretty decent offensive stats, but he's also a really stingy defender. So I don't think USC really has anyone that can go against them or anything. So SMU should take this one pretty handedly. Next round or next matchup, we have Baylor taking down New Mexico State. I think Baylor every year I pick. There's a few teams that like I just don't like or I don't feel strongly for, and they always prove me wrong. Baylor's one of them. Um, they have a tough road ahead of them after winning this game, but I think that they are a strong 3 seed. If they were anything above a 3 seed, they'd probably be the strongest of their seed. But I do think that Oregon and UCLA are stronger 3 seeds than Baylor. Um, but if Baylor was like a 4 seed or a 5 seed, I think they'd be the strongest of those seeds. So they're not a bad team by any means, but I think they take it this round against New Mexico State. Next matchup is Marquette versus South Carolina. South Carolina's been in a really bad slump as of late, and Marquette has shown really, really good shooting days. So when they can hit, they just drop points. So they're the best 3-point shooting team in the nation, and they actually beat Villanova back in January. So they've also beaten 5 other teams that are in the tournament. So I just think Marquette they have they're kind of like the poor man's Golden State Warriors in a sense. They can if they can get their shooting down, it's gonna be tough for any team to beat them. And South Carolina won't have the defense to really defend against that. So I think Marquette wins this one. I think Duke beats Troy in the next game. Duke looked pretty dominating throughout the ACC tournament. They have a good head of steam and all that kind of stuff, so they should have no issue handling a number 15 seed. In the next round of the Eastern region, I have Nova beating Wisconsin. Again, Wisconsin doesn't really have very good free throw shooting. They don't really have that great of a defense to defend Nova's field goal percentage. Nova shoots pretty high from field goal percentage. Nova actually shoots better percentages all around than Wisconsin. So they have the offense, and I believe they have the defense. So they should be able to take down Wisconsin pretty easily in this round. Next game, it's a 13 seed and a 12 seed. I have the 13 seed winning actually with Eastern Tennessee beating University of North Carolina Willingham, and obviously when it comes down to a 13 seed versus a 12 seed, there's not much logic behind it because for the most part both teams probably snuck past in the first round with some last minute buzzer beater or Hail Mary type play or something. So I see Eastern Tennessee and UNCW both sneaking by their first round, probably in like a 2-point or a 3-point game. But they're going to be playing each other in the next round, and I just think Eastern Tennessee is the better of the two teams. And not only that, but I would think that Eastern Tennessee beat the better team in the first round. So that's one reason that goes into that as well. I think SMU defeats Baylor. I could get bitten on this because I always go against Baylor, and Baylor always proves me wrong. But SMU, I just think they're riding a really good hot streak right now, and I think getting hot towards the end of the year. SMU has actually been hot for a while now, but being hot at the end of the year specifically is something that you got to take into effect when this tournament rolls around. So SMU should be able to defeat Baylor here. Duke, I think they can. I think Duke does have the defense and the offense to slow down Marquette's shooting. So I think Duke can take down Marquette in this round to advance to the Sweet 16. In the Sweet 16, I think that Villanova ends up just smashing Eastern Tennessee. Um, they're too experienced. They won the tournament last year, and Eastern Tennessee, like I said, they probably both of their wins probably came pretty heroically, and Nova's just too good of a team for them to do that too. Uh, Other matchup, even though Duke has been riding a good little wave here, winning the ACC tournament, all that kind of stuff. I think that and everyone wants to see Duke versus Nova in the Elite Eight. So I think SMU actually ruins that want that everyone wants to see that matchup by defeating Duke and showing that they're going to end up being the highest seed in the Elite Eight. But once they do get to the Elite Eight, I have Nova beating them and going into the Final Four. Nova has been criticized a little bit. Some people are saying that their number one seed really isn't worthy and all that kind of stuff, but they had a lot of health issues early on in the year, and now they're healthy. I think their experience will end up showing, and they will advance into the Final Four. Now we will go on to the Western region. All right. This is another region where I seem to always pick certain teams, and they end up screwing me over. First of which being Gonzaga. Past couple years now, Gonzaga has been a pretty top seed up there. Had a lot of hype around them. They play in kind of a weak conference, so they always end up making the tournament. I do have them beating South Dakota State pretty handedly. They they have some good players on their team. Nigel Williams-Goss is one of the guys that is really the known leader of their team and the stars. So I think just him alone can be enough to beat a 16 seed. And once again, 16 seeds never beat a 1 seed. Next round, Northwestern versus Vanderbilt. I actually have Vanderbilt winning. This is Northwestern's first appearance in the tournament. I think it's going to end up being short-lived. Vanderbilt isn't that much better than them, but I just think that they have enough to get out of the round. They play a little bit better teams in their conference and stuff. So I think they have enough to beat Northwestern in that round. Next matchup, Notre Dame. Sorry, Notre Dame beats Princeton. Princeton is one of the dark horse teams that a lot of teams have. I've seen a couple brackets from like the guys on ESPN and Fox Sports and stuff where they actually have Princeton winning in the next round and then beating the Zags in the Sweet 16. So, which I think is crazy, but I think North Dakota, or I keep saying North Dakota, Notre Dame has they showed a lot in their tournament. They made it all the way to the championship game against Duke and ended up losing. But I think that they show that they have a lot of good players and things like that to be able to play in this tournament and be able to show their skill set and all that kind of stuff. So Notre Dame should be able to beat Princeton here. Could be one of the ones that everyone is seeing as pretty the 12 over the 5 thing. They say to pick a 12 over a 5 every year, and this is the one that most people tend to be picking, but I don't like the way it looks. If Princeton was playing any other 4 seed, I'd probably I'd probably or five or any other 5 seed, then I'd probably say okay. But Notre Dame is probably the best of all the 5 seeds, so I I don't think that that's the case in this particular scenario. Next round, we got West Virginia beating Bucknell. Um, this one I was actually tempted to take Bucknell over West Virginia, but I didn't trust it enough. I just think that Western Virginia is one of those teams that seems to always at least get to the second round unless they have a really bad seed and play a really good team first. But for the most part, when West Virginia has a better seed, they ended up making it. Um, they have a guy on their team, Javon Carter, that is he's got really high defense and offense efficiency, and so I just think that enough is going to be good to take out Bucknell. The next round, Xavier has actually kind of been really hit or miss, but so is Maryland. And I think Xavier is going to be one of those teams that ends up kind of riding a wave during the NCAA tournament. And so Xavier was ranked like really high at the beginning of the year and kind of just slowly made their way down. Um, they've had to they've had to overcome a lot of adversities, players getting suspended, leaving, hurt, all that kind of stuff. So I think they'll have enough power to get through this round though, and maybe even go in a second round. They're one of my double digit seeded teams that I see going 3 rounds. And this is probably the one that's really going to screw my bracket up if it doesn't happen. I just kind of wanted to go for a Hail Mary and hope, since there's always one that just fools everyone. I have Florida Gulf Coast pulling out a win over Florida State. Um, Florida Gulf Coast had a historic run last year. They got out of the first round as well against a higher seed. But I don't think they're really going to go far. I just think that they're going to end up having enough to get through this round. Some miracle plays or whatever. Um, the only thing that concerns me about picking uh, this matchup is that Florida State actually has 2 players that could be NBA bound, Dwayne Bacon and Jonathan Isaac, specifically Jonathan Isaac. But so I just think that this could be one of the ones that really bites me. Um, the next matchup we have I have St. Mary beating VCU. Um, VCU is one of those teams that's seems to be in a factor each of these tournaments, but I St. Mary had to play in the same division as Gonzaga, and although they don't have much competition there, I think that it is going to be enough to get St. Mary fairly far into this tournament, or past the first round. But at least get one win out of the deal. So um, they'll probably end up pulling off a close game here and beating VCU. Then I have Arizona beating North Dakota. Arizona is one of the teams that I can actually see making it to the Final Four. They looked really strong in the Pac-12 tournament. I mean, they beat kind of a beat up and demoralized Oregon team, but they still look really strong, and they have 1 or 2 NBA prospects on their team, so they should be able to handle this game pretty well. In the round of 32, I have the Zags beating Vanderbilt. Like I said, Vanderbilt probably sneaks by their first game. The Zags, I think, will put on a dominant performance against them. Kind of a thing that the Zags do right before they let you down. They destroy a few teams. In in the path. So I think Vanderbilt's going to be one of those teams that they end up destroying. And then I have North Dakota beating West Virginia. North Dakota, or I keep saying North Dakota because I have Indy written down. My bad. Notre Dame beating West Virginia. Um, Notre Dame, like I said, they have a lot of momentum coming from the ACC tournament, and I think that'll be enough there to beat West Virginia. Also, it's to note that their stud player Bonzi Colston shoots almost 40% from 3-point and 55% from inside the line. So just those stats are pretty impressive for a player. So I think that he'll be a force to be reckoned with in this tournament, in this region at least, and it should be a good win for Notre Dame. And then having Florida Gulf Coast pull out a crazy victory over Florida State in the first round, I have them losing to Xavier in the second round. Just like most teams that upset a high seed, they don't really go far, and Florida Gulf Coast gets snapped back to reality with Xavier beating them. And I think Xavier will absolutely dominate them, but again, I just think Xavier's the better team of the two, and Florida Gulf Coast most likely got lucky or fortunate to get a win in the first round, so it should be a win for Xavier. Then I have Arizona beating St. Mary's. Yeah, so Arizona has those two players on their team that are possible NBA first round picks, and I just think that'll be enough to beat St. Mary's team that hasn't really seen that much competition, and I think that St. Mary's is probably ranked too high as it is. They probably should have been swapped with Wichita State, in my opinion. So I don't think Wichita State would have fared as any much better than St. Mary's in this particular region, but I do think that St. Mary's maybe got a little bit of a gift on their rank. Ooh, excuse me, I had to sneeze. So yeah, I have Arizona winning this round. In the Sweet 16, I have the Zags playing a really competitive game against Notre Dame, but winning. So I just think that the Zags really haven't seen much competition. They had a weird glitch feeling loss against BYU at home. They've dominated some Pac-12 teams during the season and stuff. So this will be their first real test against a team from a really really good conference. So, but I think the Zags end up winning here. If they don't, I mean, it's very, very likely that Notre Dame can end up taking the win here. But I have the Zags pulling it out. Should be a really, really good game. I'd be very excited to watch this game. Then in the next round, I got Arizona beating Xavier. I think Arizona, if this ends up being the matchup, I think they just dominate Xavier and just win by double digits, maybe even 20 or so. And then in the next round, based on what I believe, I think the Zags end up beating Arizona. They've already beat them once this year, and the Zags have played some tough foes in the Pac-12, like I said, and so I think they can beat Arizona to go to their first Final Four. All right, let's move on to the Western region here, or Midwest, sorry. And there we go. All right, so I have Kansas beating, UC Davis. I forgot that I had to wait until the game was finished tonight. That's one reason why I'm doing the podcast so late. So Kansas is going against UC Davis in the first round, even though up at the top here it says that it's NC or UD. It's because I was waiting for that play-in game to start, and I had already pre-marked this bracket down and stuff. So Kansas, I think they beat UC Davis pretty easily. And then in the next matchup, I have Miami beating Michigan State. Michigan State's got a good coach, and usually I go with the good coach, Tom Izzo. In the first round, like I pick a better coach. If it's a really even matchup, I pick the better coach. But I don't know. There's just something about this matchup that just makes me want to pick Miami. I really can't explain it. This is definitely one of the ones that I was kind of tossed up about at first, but once I made up my mind, I didn't really change it. So yeah, I just think Miami pulls this one out and gets a win over Michigan State. Also to note, Michigan State's another one of those teams that I almost always pick against, and they almost always prove me wrong. So there's that too. Next matchup, we have Iowa State beating Nevada. Iowa State's been pretty impressive. They've been a really, really hot team. They have NBA prospect Monte Morris on their team. And I just think that they're going to get a pretty good win here against Nevada and move on to the next round. And here's one of the ones that I'm kind of iffy about, but I feel confident enough to put it in my final bracket. I have Vermont upsetting Purdue. I don't like to choose two 13 seeds in the same bracket. Usually only one makes it through. But I just think that between Vermont and Eastern Tennessee, I will. It'll be a good. They're both good picks to upset 4 seeds. So I think Vermont, they're on a really, really hot streak right now, and I just think that it continues. They end up getting at least a win here in the first round. Next matchup, I have Rhode Island taking out Creighton. Rhode Island's another one of the really popular teams that people are picking. That they're probably the most popular 11 seed that people have kind of going. Creighton does have an NBA ready player in the center Justin Patton, but again, I just think Rhode Island is it's one of those teams that just has a lot of hype about it right now, and I think it'll end up propelling them to a win. Oregon, I have defeating Iona. Oregon, they still made it to the Pac-12 championship even without their forward Boucher, and I think they get out of this round pretty easily. Oregon or UCLA are probably the 2-3 seeds that honestly I could have even seen as 2 seeds. UCLA would have had to make it to the championship of the Pac-12 to probably become a 2 seed, if anything, or win the dang thing. But I do think UCLA and Oregon both have really, really strong 3 seed power. And in the next round, not to mention that Dylan Brooks is a beast. So Oregon defeats Iona there. In the next matchup, I have Michigan beating Oklahoma State. Not only is Oklahoma State on a really bad cold streak right now, but Michigan's on a really hot streak. And just because of that, I pick Michigan in this matchup. Next, I got Louisville beating Jacksonville State. This is the 2 seed that I can see losing in the first round out of all the 2 seeds. Louisville was strong last year. They were strong the year before, but there's something about them this year. I just think that they don't have the same feel to them as they have in the past. So I can definitely see them dropping one here as the only 2 seed to lose to a 15 seed in this year's tournament. But I still have them taking Jacksonville State out. Next round, I have Kansas beating Miami. I just think Kansas, with all their NBA players and stuff, that they're going to be too much for Miami to handle. and so I think they can win one here. Then this is another one that's I'm picking one hot team over another hot team. I have Vermont beating Iowa State. I guess you could say Vermont's my Cinderella story. I just think that it's one of those dumb cases where a team gets really hot at the right time and they just meet the right teams during that they match up well against and all that kind of stuff during the tournament. So I say that they win that one. I have Oregon beating Rhode Island. Like I said, Rhode Island's one of the crazier picks that people have been doing, and I've seen a lot of brackets that have Rhode Island beating Oregon. And Oregon is one of those teams that I pick seemingly every year, and they end up letting me down. So I can totally see Oregon just dropping a deuce here, but I have Oregon beating Rhode Island. I think the team's just too much. They still have good rim protectors and Dylan Brooks and all that kind of stuff. So um, should be a win for Oregon. Next round, this is where I have Louisville dropping one. I think Michigan ends up taking out Louisville. Louisville's really inconsistent, and Michigan's on a streak right now. So I think this is where um, Michigan will take out Louisville. In the Sweet 16, I have Kansas beating Vermont. Now, obviously, I said Vermont made it pretty far. Um, I can. Kansas is one of the teams that I pick against a lot, even though they always seem to have NBA ready players and things like that. For some reason, I don't know what it is. I don't see Kansas as a top team every year, and every year they shove it right down my throat. But I see them beating Vermont here, although it'd be absolutely hilarious if Vermont ended up beating them the year that I keep having Kansas win and win and win. Um, and then in the next game, I have Oregon beating Michigan. Oregon stops that Michigan winning streak. And I could actually see Oregon blowing them out just to kind of hype up Oregon for the next round. Um, and in the next round, I actually have Oregon making their first Final Four in almost 80 years by beating Kansas. I think this will be a really good game. It'll have a lot of good matchups and probably be a really really close. But I have Oregon coming out ahead in this one. Then we're going to move on to the South region, where we start with UNC Tar Heels versus Texas Southern. I have UNC winning an easy one here. Um, Not much else to say about that. Next game, I have Seton Hall beating Arkansas. This is a popular one that almost everyone I've seen is picking the 8 seed over the 9 seed in this matchup. I'm picking Seton Hall. I just think that they have really good shooting, and they just came off a big game against Nova in the conference tournament, and where they almost beat Nova. They got really close. I think it was 57-55 or something like that. They held Nova to very little points and things like that. So I think with Seton Hall's defense and their good shooting, that they can end up taking Arkansas down. The next game, I have Middle Tennessee beating Minnesota. This is probably the 12/5 seed that I'm most confident about. And again, I usually only pick one 12/5, but in this tournament, I actually picked two because I had North Carolina Willingham over who was it? Over Virginia. So yeah, this is another one where I can totally see uh, This is Middle Tennessee over Minnesota is probably my most confident pick of all of the lower seeds beating a higher seed. So I have Butler beating Winthrop in the next round. Butler is another one of those teams. Proves me wrong every year. I always pick against them. They always end up beating the team, all that kind of stuff. So this should be an easy win for them. I don't think that this will be a 13 seed beating a 4 seed at all. So Butler should win this one pretty handily. Next round we got Cincinnati Bearcats beating Kansas State. Kansas State won the play-in game against Wake Forest. my original bracket I filled out, I actually had Cincinnati going to the Elite Eight, I think. I ended up changing it after just reading some things and watching some footage and things like that. So I do have them beating Kansas State in this round, though. I think it'll be a pretty easy win. In the next game, I have UCLA beating Kent State. UCLA underperformed in their conference tournament. If you base it on the fact that they have a top 3 NBA draft pick in Lonzo Ball, and they actually have TJ Leaf too. So they have 2 NBA ready guys on their team and all that kind of stuff. So I think they are going to be pretty strong in this tournament. I think they're gonna come balling out and show why they, these kids are going to show why they should be picked in the draft and all that kind of stuff. So UCLA should be able to beat Kent State pretty easily in this one. Next one, I have Wichita State over Dayton. Wichita State has actually been talked about a lot for being snubbed on what seed they got. Like I said earlier, I think they should maybe switch with St. Mary's seed or maybe Northwestern's. But be that as they may, they ended up still getting put into the toughest region, in my opinion and many people's opinion. I think they can beat Dayton in this first round, though. And then I have number 2 Kentucky over Northern Kentucky. Not much to say there. I just think Kentucky's pretty dominant, and they should be able to handle Northern Kentucky fairly well. Round of 32, I have North Carolina Tar Heels taking out Seton Hall. UNC is dominant. They're inconsistent, but I think on a neutral site, they have the advantage over teams that they're definitely better than. I can see they're winning here because of their size and because of the fact that most teams obviously play better at home. UNC's only loss at home this year was against Kentucky. They play really well on the road, and even though they are on the road, so is Seton Hall. Neutral site, I give it to UNC. Um, then Butler, I think Butler ends up beating Middle Tennessee. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if Middle Tennessee wins and Butler fools me the year that I actually decide to pick them. But I think Butler's strong enough. I have them going fairly far in this tournament, so um, I think Butler can beat Middle Tennessee here, and they have a pretty easy first 2 rounds, in my opinion. Butler does, so um, they should be able to win both their first 2 rounds. Very easy. Um, and then I have UCLA beating Cincinnati. Again, like I said, Cincinnati Bearcats, I originally had them going into my Elite Eight, changed it at the last minute. I just think Lonzo Ball and that UCLA team are going to be all hyped up and end up going far. If Cincinnati was in any other bracket as a 6 seed, I would see them going to the Elite Eight most likely. But in this one, can't see it. Got UCLA winning. Something inside me is just telling me to go with UCLA. And no, it is not LeVar Ball. Then I have Kentucky taking out Wichita State. Although I can see Wichita State pulling out another upset since they're pretty good at that. I think Kentucky's just too strong. They're not as hyped as they were in the past, but that might be better. And they got studs on their team that can play in the NBA right now, so I think Kentucky can handle Wichita State in this case. Sweet 16, I actually have the Butler Bulldogs beating the Tar Heels. This one is kind of a weird, like, reverse psychology type thing with some logic sprinkled in, because, like I said, Butler always wins when I pick against them, and the Tar Heels always lose when I root for them. So I'm kind of doing a double opposite thing here, where I'm going to pick the Butler Bulldogs and root against the North Carolina Tar Heels and see what happens. Like, who knows if either of these teams will even be playing in the Sweet 16 against each other. But yeah, I think I think there's that. Also, I just think that North Carolina shows a lot of inconsistencies. They throughout the year they've beat some really good teams and showed their strengths, and then they turn around and then they lose against a team that they should definitely beat. So I think this is one of those cases, and I think the Butler Bulldogs take it. I think in the next matchup, Kentucky is just too much for UCLA. Coach Calipari's experience and plays a role in it, as well as the two guys in their team that are NBA first round picks and Malik Monk and De'Aaron Fox. Um, Versus the one first round pick in Lonzo Ball. So Kentucky's just too strong for UCLA, and they end up taking this one. In the Elite Eight, I have Kentucky shutting down the Butler run. I just think Kentucky's too strong. They end up making it to the Final Four. And speaking of the Final Four, so Final Four, I have Villanova playing Gonzaga. I think this is where the Gonzaga, I don't know if you can call it a Cinderella story since they're a one seed, but it would be a good run by them. They've been ranked high in past years and not performed, and this would be the first year that they've actually performed. They got all the way to the Final Four just to lose to the defending champions Villanova, and so I have Villanova taking that one from Gonzaga. Gonzaga probably has more college stud players on their team than Villanova does, as far as like individual talent goes. But I think Villanova just has the better overall team. So I think they ended up winning this one from experience and playing against better teams throughout the year and all that kind of stuff. In the other Final Four matchup, I have Oregon and Kentucky. I have Kentucky beating Oregon. Both the teams that I pretty much root for every year, and Oregon and Gonzaga. I also root for the Tar Heels pretty much every year too. But I have them both losing in the Final Four. Who knows if they even make it that far? But Kentucky with their studs, Oregon not having their full roster and all that kind of stuff. I think that it's just going to be too much for them to overcome, and Kentucky plays against Villanova. And I did not plan this ahead of time, I swear to you, but I have Wildcats versus Wildcats in the championship. Villanova Wildcats versus Kentucky Wildcats. Also want to point out that I had Wildcats versus Bulldogs in both the South region, Kentucky versus Butler, and in the West region with Zags versus the Arizona Wildcats. So, funny little thing that I did not plan when I filled out my bracket there. Championship game, I have Villanova beating Kentucky to repeat. Villanova would be like the third team, I think, to repeat in the past 25, 30 years, something like that. Kentucky has good players and all that kind of stuff. I just think Villanova's just a better team, being healthy now, being here in this game more recently and all that kind of stuff. I just think they have the firepower to be able to beat a Kentucky team. I don't think it'll be as close as the Villanova UNC national title game last year, and I think Villanova ends up pulling out the victory there. All right, and let's go ahead and there we go. All right, so that's going to be it for my March Madness video. I just wanted to put this out before any of the games started, and with my predictions and all that kind of stuff. I did a little bit of research this week on some things that I was a little bit less aware of, and if you end up using my information or whatever, my bracket to fill out your own bracket, then good luck to you, and sorry if I let you down. I should be putting out a off-season NFL and kind of post-season type NBA one podcast, episode 9, I believe it is, here in the next week or two. I was trying to do this every week. It turns out that sometimes I can't get to all this information and stuff through a full week, so I've kind of been doing it every 2 weeks. But I'm really hoping to, especially during the football season or the NBA playoff season, definitely putting an episode out a week. But thank you all for watching, and I will catch you next time on Let's Take a Dive.